All right, everybody, for the sense of being punctual, we're going to get started. There are some seats that are still available up front and in the middle. A couple of housekeeping rules. There are bathrooms just to the back of the chambers, just outside the hall. I'd like to recognize we have two commissioners that are in the audience. We have Commissioner Coffin and Commissioner Burnham. I'm Charlie Mops. I'm the Director of Public Works for the town of Longboat Key. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about our canal program that we're trying to establish. It's a navigation maintenance program, and this is something that we've been working on with the town for quite a long time. I'm going to let the team introduce themselves. That way, the people online can actually recognize who's speaking.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Stroik. I'm one of the principals at First Line Coastal, consultant to the town, helping with the technical aspects of the project.
Good afternoon. My name is Tara Hollis. I'm with Wildan Financial Services, and I'm the financial consultant to help developing what the assessment rate and the assessment program would be.
Yeah, no, there's feedback. I don't know why. I'm trying to fix that. We have our IT guys in the vicinity, so we'll try to work through this. This is a first. Let me see if I can't mute it from here and see if that helps. Does that help? Nope, does not. It's coming in through the speakers up above us. We're gonna just carry on, and we'll try to get this fixed as we're moving along. I apologize for the technical issues, but first I want to kind of bring everybody to the main webpage. And the reason why I'm doing this is because there's a button that was created that literally houses the program website. There's another spot, so if this button ever gets used for something else, there's a whole nother spot under town government. I'm sorry, under residents, because this is for you. Under Waterway Navigation Maintenance Program. So either one will take you to the exact same spot. And so if you do click on it, you'll end up here. I'm sorry. I tried to mute. That one should be muted. All right, so in here, we're just going to click on one of these. It's going to bring us right to the town's Waterway Navigation Maintenance Program website. In there, we'll have on the very top, we'll always have information pertaining to the next meeting, and then a Teams link or a Zoom link that will be provided as well with a meeting ID and passcode. And then as you start to scroll down, why does this project matter to us? If you click on this button, it will take you to another website where it has all the detailed information. If you want to know, directly, hey, well, how is this program potentially going to affect us? You know what I mean? As far as financially, you could click right on this link right here. And we're going to go through this, so you're going to see it all anyway. So if I clicked on here, it's going to bring you right to this, which is, hold on one second. It's Longboat Key Waterway Maintenance Program. In it, there's going to be a lot of drop-down menus that give you the waterway conditions on Longboat Key. If you click on this, there's a whole nother link that literally will have a canal sheet, which the First Line consultant team went out there and they actually drove every canal, surveyed every canal. Conditional survey, not to the standard by which you could go out for permitting or construction, but just to get an assessment survey, they call them. And we'll kind of give you hey, what are the program goals behind that? I keep scrolling into there. If you go into this, which is more program information, it contains literally the slide deck that we're going to be going through at the beginning of this presentation. So to blow it up so everybody can see it nice and clear, it goes right into the title slide. And then protecting our waterways is a virtually important part of our quality of life for our community. If you look, the main picture on here, it shows we're a barrier island. So we maintain our streets, we maintain all these different aspects and parks and whatnot, but we haven't maintained our waterways since 2003. So that's 23 years where we've had siltation, we've had storm events, we've had just normal things going on. And ever since the 90s, the commission's been trying to come up with a program, not just a project, in order to like affect change on this. So it aligns with our vision and mission. If you look at the town's vision and mission, we're the natural assets of a burial island combined with cultural and recreational amenities. One of those amenities happened to be the canals, the access channels, and the perimeter canal channels that we all, our residents like to enjoy. To vigorously maintain and preserve Longboat Key's status as a premier residential and visitors destination is another one of those key vision and mission. Yeah, it's in our vision and mission statement that helps promote why everybody wants to come to Longboat Key and live on Longboat Key. So our property values and our quality of life revolve around clean, navigable water. Right now, if you guys all know this, like all of our canals are on Sarasota Bay National Estuary Program. So you literally have the joy of living within one of the only 14 national estuaries in the entire country. And because of, our connection to that, it gives the residents a route to go out there and enjoy that. Waterways are a shared amenity that support each of us. There are people that I got an email just the other day from a resident in Country Club Shores where he's like, well, my canal, I have people that paddleboard up and down it. I have people that jet ski up and down it. And so it's not just for the people who reside there, but there are places on this island where people like to go visit, go fishing in some of these fringe canals. All right, so a little bit of that background historic review. This issue first was studied back in 1996. There was over 30 public meetings with the commission from the 90s all the way through now. Me personally, when I first came on board around 2018, 2019, I was told because of my background, I used to run the whole navigation maintenance program and the coastal program for Charlotte County for 15 years. There was, like over 300 miles of navigable channel I had to keep navigable. And so they were like, oh, you got some expertise. Let's, get out there and see if we can't, get something moving forward that we can actually develop a funding mechanism by which we can actually affect change. Delays have led to reduced navigability. Again, I said the last time we did a navigation maintenance dredge that town ran was in 2003. So that's 23 years ago was the last time we did this. So why now? We've been kicking that can down a long time, and now it's a once in a generation opportunity. We've never got to the point where we've got right now, where we have the commission has already accepted the fact that there is a funding methodology that's on the table, and that they've went to and passed through resolution the ability, not set a rate or do anything, just the ability to work with our neighboring counties, both Manatee and Sarasota County, to like utilize their property, property appraisers' offices in order to collect these taxes. So the plan, well, it's a responsible phase plan. It was always established as a pay-as-you-go program. It's there to restore or maintain safe navigable channels. That's the primary goal of the program. It's improving and maintaining our stormwater system. So if you live on one of these canals, you know that there's a bunch of culverts that actually dump into those canals, and that's where your stormwater comes from. So if you have stormwater runoff, there's a good chance that it would probably end up into one of those canals. It mimics the 80-20 beach split. So right now, the way we fund our beach program through bond referendum is we go out to vote every couple of years in order to collect millions of dollars in order to keep the beaches the way the beaches look. The way that split is, it's 80% Gulf side will pay 80% of the cost of that program. And then everybody else pays 20% of that program. So what we tried to do is mimic this where we flipped a script. We basically said, oh, if you live on a canal, you're receiving a little bit more of a direct benefit. So then you would end up having to pay the 80%, and then everybody else who isn't would end up paying the total of 20% of the entire program. And then it reduces long-term costs, because we're going to get into this in a little bit, and as we go through some of the details and some of the examples, that, you know, for the first 5 years, we're trying to collect up to $9 million or thereabouts $1 million in order to like get that initial dredge done. You know, get the seagrass mitigation area established. That seagrass mitigation area is tied to a bunch of our canals. We have to do it, but that's $3 million at least of the entire $9 million of that initial program. After that, it gets into maintenance, and we're looking to almost half all of those initial collections, that first 5-year collections. Okay, now I'm frozen. No, I'm not. All right, so what are some of the benefits? Well, restores and maintains the access for our recreational boaters, and improves and maintains the stormwater flow, as I previously mentioned. It reinforces the appeal for real estate and tourism. The potential reuse of the dredge material, like we're going to try to reuse that material anywhere we can. So if we can use it to help bolster that seagrass mitigation area, which will then enhance the water quality of the bay to allow seagrasses to grow where the water's too deep, we're going to take full advantage of that. There's other environmental enhancements. Like on the east coast of Florida, there are communities that actually do dredging, not for navigation, for bioload reduction. Well, if you think about 23 years of seagrass or grass clippings or any type of like detritus that fell into the canal and it sinks to the bottom, it's creating a bioload that helps feed those bad algae, you know, that we don't want, like red tide and some of the others. So that's why, you know, that's one of those communal benefits of this program. And then potential for future FEMA reimbursement. We gave the same talk to an initial group, and one of the things that came out of that was, and one of the things I've used a lot when I was down in Charlotte County, was if you have maintained navigation channels that are being monitored, then you have the ability, when you have a storm impact, to go to FEMA and get them to pay for the redredging of those canals. And I used a little bit of an example. When I was down in Charlotte County, I had 2 big dredge projects going on, 2 residential areas. Hurricane Charlie came through. I had to enact the entire, you know, hurricane plan for both of those contractors. They had to pull away. But before they pulled away, I had a survey done to show where they ended up. And so after Hurricane Charlie came through, it silted in a lot of the work they just got done doing. And I was able to go to FEMA and get them to reimburse us for maintaining those channels. It's the same way we do with the beaches. We currently have a 400,000 cubic yard beach assessment and damage report to FEMA right now, and are going through that process to get them to pay us to put that sand back on the beaches. So this kind of mirrors that same program. And again, sorry for the reverb that we have going on. So how do we pay for it? Well, we've been through a lot of iterations with our commission, you know, from very complex, you know, very over the top type financing plans, but it was broken down and the guidance was given by the commission to make it fair, simple, transparent, and a funding model similar to the beach model, because it's a model that has been accepted by the community and is one that we could easily drive forward with. So that's why when we hired First Line and we hired Tara, they came in and they actually developed this funding model and presented it at least 7 times to the commission to get us to the point where we're at now. So 80% of the cost would be paid by the canal front property owners that are receiving more of that direct benefit. And then the rest of the 20% would just be paid by everybody. Again, the estimated cost is $9 million, and that's the initial canal restoration. You know, that's what we're calling it. And then after that, we only need about $1 million a year. So if you think about it, for the first 5 years, I have to collect close to $2 million. After that, when we get into the programmatic maintenance of the program, then we're almost having what these assessments that you currently would see on your tax bill would be. So here's a little bit more about the methodology. It's a millage plus a direct assessment. So the millage is kind of the holistic benefit, but everybody pays it. So if you look at that's the that's the ad valorem assessment part of it. So if you're direct access, you're going to pay 10% of that of that ad valorem. If you're non-direct access, you'll pay 20. That's where they make up the 20% of the entire cost of the program. And then if you are direct access, there's an actual direct assessment that's being charged, and that's going to make up 70% of that cost that we need in order to move this program forward. So again, to kind of conclude this, why does it work? Well, it's fair, familiar, consistent with past practices. It saves money in the long term by avoiding emergency action. Once we get through this initial phase and we're back, now we're into the lesser, we're into the maintenance part of this program. It's less impact on the residents, because when you're trying to do and restore canals, you're there for a long time. There's a bigger impact from the construction crews and the length of time it takes them in order to like achieve the ultimate goal, which again would be an impact on all the residents. Once you get through that, and as long as you are maintaining your canals, now you're only hitting those areas where you're shoaling. It enhances overall community values and the island-wide resiliency by, again, contributing to some of those other things. And it maintains and minimizes long-term construction impacts, as I just mentioned. So with that, we're going to go into questions and comments, but before we jump into that, I'm just going to kind of show you a little bit more of the website so everybody has a good understanding of where to find this information and where to find additional information. So in the first line, we have a bunch of, like I said, the different drop downs. One of them is, hey, like, well, I want to know what my canal looks like. Well, you can click on this, and what this brings you to is all the canal sheets. So if you look at the map has numbers, and those numbers are associated with different canals. So it shows you on the map where the canals are. You got 1P, which is a perimeter canal, which kind of runs the length of the coastline. And then, Canal 2 is the one right there down by Lindley Boat Ramp. I'm sure you guys all know that location. And what they did was they actually went out there. They drove it with a boat. They actually were doing a boat view thing. So basically, eventually we'll get to there. But it's almost like, the little guy you can put on the street and have him walk down and look around. We kind of did the same thing with the boats, and they were checking all the conditions. They were checking to see if there was additional seagrasses that might have been growing into those canals. And they did a really in-depth survey of all of this. The only thing that wasn't in-depth was the bathymetric survey, which is the depth of the canals, just because, you wouldn't be able to even use that now, because if you're going out to permit, you have to redo your surveys, because the agencies want to know what are the most recent current conditions. And then you have to do it again right before you go out to construction, because the contractors want to know what is the current condition within a reasonable period of time, so that they know that the quantities by which you're saying they have to remove are accurate. So that's this part of the website. We go back. What's nice is it just keeps opening up another tab. In the Why Now, there's more of kind of like basically a synopsis of the presentation I just gave you. And then in the program funding details, it has a little bit more detailed explanation as to the 80-20 split and how we got there. And then if you go into the property specific details, this is where you have this really cool interactive map. And I don't want to pick on a property. I'm just, selecting something. If you double click on this map, it basically comes up with like, well, that's a direct access property, so it will have an assessment. And it will have an ad valorem, and the total annual assessment for that property is $171 for the first 5 years. And then what we did was we added year 6 plus, just to show what it would be in the future, which would be about $88. And this happens to be a condo, so it has one of those shared docking facilities. So it even breaks it down to that level. So everybody should have a pretty decent idea as to what will this cost me? What's the bottom line? What's the bottom line up front? And a lot of times when we have these and we start showing this, people are like, oh, well, that's not as big of a deal as I thought it would be. But then you guys, if it does pass and we get the right feedback, and we're going to go back to the commissioners at the beginning of April to let them know what the feedback is, so they can provide additional guidance to us whether or not we're going to drive forward with this. But if this does get approved, then everybody who's on a canal can basically say, I'm on a municipal maintained water body, which you currently are not. So, I mean, you could think about it that way. As far as like resale values of properties, they typically do drive up when you can actually make that statement. Municipal maintained waterway. Thank you, ma'am. And then in here we have the program. We have the program that I just showed you. There's other briefings that are in here. So again, very transparent. Everything we're doing, we're putting on here. And as you guys are able to provide feedback to us, which is super important, we're able to like increase our frequently asked questions. So if we see that there's a question that we know is going to be frequently asked, we'll try to put in that information so you can almost answer it yourself. And then we have links to our websites that you can definitely jump into. In here we have the contact information, and literally if you could do any of us a favor, we have had one-on-one conversations. We try to take notes as best we can, but if you send us an email with what your questions and or concerns are, we can capture that a lot better. So with that, I leave it open to you guys to start asking questions.
Charlie, so a couple questions. First, could you put a picture of the north end of the island? So I take it that direct benefit, which is going to be 80% share of this thing, means that the town is going to be dredging from your house basically to deep water. Canal or something.
That is not correct. The town would be dredging the center line of the canal, because any of the canals, even if it's a residential canal, the town's responsibility is to dredge that center line. So we're basically repaving the road. From the paving of the road to your dock facility, that's your driveway. And your dock or your boat lift ends up being your garage. So, just like now, we're not responsible for that, and we don't want to be responsible for that for liability.
A bunch of houses. I'm at 760 land. A bunch of houses from basically where your pointer is all the way down to East Shore that have natural deep water access. If we don't need any dredging, we have deep water. Why are we being assessed 80%?
Because if you're going to, again, this is a holistic approach. This is a town-wide approach to developing a program. If you have deep water access now, it's not to say you're going to have deep water access in 20 years, or that property would have. Well, I disagree. Okay, but I mean, and that's something that in the future, if there is like those instances by which you are feeling that you shouldn't be, that would be a point that you can bring up with your elected officials, like why are we being charged? Well, again, this is a holistic approach in order to maintain all the waterways within our system.
So one last question. This is yet to be approved by the commission.
Correct.
I know the workshops and the hearings.
So May 1st will be the first reading, and then June 1st will be the second. Those are the two commission meetings by which they're voting meetings. And so, May 4th, thank you. No, we're gonna present the feedback to the commission. We've already had 13 different workshops with the commission on this program and the program development. But that's when the public hearings are going to happen. And at those is when the millage and the assessments will be set as far as, what those would be. Ma'am, you had your hand up first. I'll come back here.
Has access beaches. First case, you're probably walking about 4. As a practical matter, access to these canals really goes through canals. On a boat, I rented a boat today, went out into one of these canals. Realistically, not wide enough to get down. But if I were decided to just hang out there and read my book for the hour, I guarantee you the police. Now, if you are coming to the beach where I live, you have every right to be on that part of the water that is at the water line on the beach. Practical matter, I don't have access to the canals. It's analogous to me back home in Ohio City. I am going to repave my driveway, but I expect my neighbor to take some of it. It's essentially a private use of the public.
Mhm.
Okay? I still think that 20% is not fair.
Okay. I mean, we'll take that into consideration. Again, we're trying to collect information so we can present it back to the commission so they can actually make make the best educated decision that they can. Oh, actually, I'm going to go over here first because these two gentlemen had their hands up.
That's the one, but main channel, very deep, even at the potential at the very end, maybe.
Well, and it's a great point, but there are other residents and neighbors in Country Club Shores that are telling me, why aren't you doing this tomorrow? So, I mean, again, it's like one of those things that like we want to capture your opinion, but if you go on to any of these canals, those canals and this canal is all dug through a sandbar. So if, over time they're going to silt in, those access channels are going to become more limited. When you have two boats that are trying to pass at the same time, it becomes a little bit more dangerous than if you're directly in the center line. So what we're trying to do is maintain what the previous permits from 2003 and even prior to that were pulled for in order to like maintain that level of service. You got another, if you have a follow-on question, go right ahead. No, yeah, all of it, everything that you see. I'm going to blow the map back up. It's everything that you see. Like this is the southern half map. So any of the canals that are depicted on this or on the screen, the perimeter channel around Bay Isles, the access channel that goes in, these access channels for Country Club Shores, 54 that goes up around here. Any one of these that might need future maintenance or currently does need maintenance, these are the ones that we're going to be targeting.
Said the dredged material is going to be reused. That been factored into to reduce the total cost?
Absolutely.
And do you know off the top of your head what is the ratio of direct access properties, indirect access?
I'll pass that question to Tara.
Let me just check. I think we're about 50-50, but hold on just 1 second.
Yeah.
So of the approximately 10,200 parcels that are within the town, about 4,262 are direct access and 5,940 are non-direct access. So about 60-40, 40% direct.
That's correct.
Homeowners be able to join this program and have the bridging done from their bulkhead out to the canal or no?
That's a great question. Again, through liability issues, the town doesn't want to assume dredging underneath a pile supported structure or next to a seawall because nobody knows the age of it or the condition. However, while that contractor is there, we're going to let the citizens know that, hey, we're going to have a contractor in your neighborhood. So if you want to have dredging in and around your dock in order to make it so you can lower your lift better, have better access, you'll just come under a separate contract with that contractor, but we'll take care of the spoils for you. And so I used to do this a lot in Charlotte County. I used to offer it a lot. And at first, the first couple of groups that you would do this with, you would get onesie, twosies. The next time you came around, like almost everybody was doing it, where I'm like, hey, contractor, you have to do the county contract or the town contract first and then go back on the weekends and hit those dock sides. Because there's a massive benefit because it's usually pennies on the dollar as far as getting that material removed because they'll just charge you by the bin load. Sir. Oh, where on the website so I can? Okay, great. Let's take a look. For the first 5 years. No, for the first 5 years is about the 2 million to get to just over 9 million for the first, and after that, at year 6, we're hoping to half that. Correct. Yeah, and that number will be adjusted after we start developing shoaling rates and where our impact's necessary. We can actually reduce that further. But we're just right now we're programming in at year 6 to keep it at about a $1 million versus a $2 million collection in order to get us through. Then because you still have to go out there and do surveys every year. You want to go out there and do conditional surveys, especially on those most affected higher shoaling rate communities, and every other year on the other ones. And that costs a lot of money in order to make sure that you're maintaining the visibility on these canals so that they're not just falling into disrepair again. And because of that effort, that's where you're able to go to FEMA and say, even though I dredged this canal 2 years ago, we've been maintaining it and keeping an eyeball on it. And this is what it looked like right before the storm. Well, right now, this is what we're projecting. Yes, correct. Go ahead. So that's a great question, and I can answer it. Unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of Charlie Mop speaking today, but if right now the way we're looking at it, and this is one of the frequently asked questions that are literally going up because we had that question asked in person today or via email. Within the first 3 years is when we want to start action because, like I said before, it's a pay-as-you-go program. However, we have just asked through Commissioner Buchanan's office, not Commissioner, Congressman Buchanan's office, for an appropriation through the Water Resource Development Act of 2026 in order to fund the first $3 million. So if I can get that, I can go out there and hit those priority canals, and I'll get to you what those priority canals are. But if I can do that, I can go out there and build that seagrass mitigation site, which is tied to a lot of these canals. And I have to build that within the first year, according to our Army Corps permit, the minute I start action. So the priority canals are basically any canal that I can get good quality sand. And one of the things that we charge First Line to do is go out there and do core borings on all these canals because we have to have a certain grain size and a certain quality of sand that we can put in this mitigation area. And so they actually already done that. They've taken those samples to a lab and they had them tested. So we know where we can go hit all these, these canals, because it's cheaper for us to actually dredge it out of your canal, take it over, because it's just on the other side of Sister Keys. There is the old Long Bar Channel that was dug by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1889. And then the Army Corps said, oh, we don't want that channel there anymore. And so in 1916, they put it on the other side of Sister Keys, more west. Well, they left that hole for us. Well, that hole never had seagrasses growing in it because it's below the photic zone. And so the grasses can't grow, the sun can't penetrate. So the thought is, and we had it permitted, and we actually have the permit, if we take the material from these canals, if it's good enough material, we take it out there, it's only handled once. And you guys all know this, the more you handle material, the more it costs you, right? And then we can take it out to that area and we drop it in there. And then eventually when we get it up to the elevation that will support seagrasses, we actually plant seagrasses at the same time. So there's going to be, even though there's like 15 canals associated with that permit, there's other canals we're looking at to supplement that, because I can only get possibly 9,000 cubic yards and I need like almost 30. So if I can get this appropriation, then we're going to be able to affect change and probably drop those rates even, within that first 5 years. The other thing the town is looking to do potentially is ask the commission whether or not they want to go with a short-term loan. And after we collect the first dollar, you're allowed to get a short-term loan to kickstart the program, maybe for $3 or $4 million in order to move this project forward. And then it's just a payback, but that might affect those rates a little tiny bit because obviously interest, we all have to pay interest. So just like you, we would too. So it might affect the rates, but we're talking, not a lot. Yes, sir.
Up for over 5 years. And I recall the dredging in 2003, and the timeline seemed to work quite well, and everything was fine. But canals are subject to drainage pipe from a public road, which is that pipe is totally silted in, mainly the west parts canals 29 and 30.
Right.
Whereas no boat you barely can launch a kayak. So we are pleading for you to borrow the money to get started quickly. Don't wait, please, 2 to 3 years, because our boats will be flooded by then because they're not getting used. Can't get out.
Right.
So if you could please, my whole community, 6+ houses, whatever, ask me to come here and make our request.
Great.
Please start as early as possible, because we've had this problem for over 5 years.
I appreciate the compliments or the comment. And that's one of the things. That's why we know that, and we know that like it's happening at Lighthouse Point. It's happening in Country Club Shores at some of the dead ends where some of the culverts from Gulf of Mexico Drive actually just lead right out into it. There are some really silt, especially in the north end of Country Club Shores. There's some really skinny access channels going into some of those. So we see that, and that's why that's one of those things that's bringing up. Maybe we do the short-term loan, but we already asked for the appropriation, so we're trying to work through that process now. If I can get that, then hey, we're a little bit more golden than we thought. Yes, sir. Okay. Oh, sure.
And the $9 million, how was that going to get split out?
And it does. It has to do with the evaluation of the home. So whatever the taxable value of the home, that's the millage side. And then there's a set assessment at $620 a year for the direct access. So again, I don't want to pick anybody's property. I'm just randomly, okay? Yeah. So look up on the screen. If you could see, I'm gonna walk you through this a little bit. This house, I don't know who it is. It has a taxable value of just over $6,500,000. It has one boat. It has one boating access. So every house is given the value of one. So with that, the millage rate is set at 0.623. Their assessment, their yearly assessment would be $41. I'm sorry, the yearly millage tax will be $41. She's looking at me, giving me the evil eye over there. Right. And then their assessment would be that additional $620. That's so for the first 5 years, every year they would pay $661 to maintain their waterway. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's based off of that millage rate of 0.6. Yeah, like I'll find the house at the end because typically, they're a little bit more valuable. Here's a $5 million house with, it still has a 1 EBU. At their assessment's 339 plus the 620, so they're going to pay 950 a year for the first 5 years. Then after that, again, we're trying to have that. And then once we get into like the actual maintenance and going out there and looking at and going out there doing the surveys and the conditional surveys, we can update even that to say, hey, we don't even need this much money or we need more. But then we'd be coming back to the commission in order to set those. Right, sir.
Totally support. 20. Question I have. This is to collect money from actually for letter C, break fishing. I have troll fishing all day, every day.
Right.
Can we get the tourist money somehow add to the pot? Residents. Should we? We're not dealing with
That's a great point. If there are obviously we do have some retail properties that are on here that are kind of directly related to boating. There are EVUs and there are rates set for them as well. But as far as like if you're on a residential canal and your neighbor actually has a fishing guide business and he's running it out of there, I don't know how that would answer. I'd have to look to our consultants for like what right would potentially look like.
gives it up and it's spent on something. There's a significant portion of this. Imagine being a beach resident. Somebody could have part of the traffic on not even long.
Right.
It's literally load up on the beach. 3 times a day. Same guy, next guy, next guy, next. Right where they get, these people are paying what, $600? He's making a living. Tearing up my dog.
Yeah, you're making a great point. Because again, that's why it's a shared amenity. That's why we live on an island, and yeah, exactly. And we get it, but that's a unique circumstance, but it's something that we can look into.
Got 2 comments, if I may.
Sure, sir.
Being people who live along with people who have canals. The people who live along beaches, presumably live on public beaches.
They do.
Access to those people. You don't have the kind of parking lot you have up in Hanover. In fact, you have to be a local, even know where to access point beach hall if you come in by. I live over in Country Club. Last week, they put in on the Gulf side. They gave us a private access sidewalk, 100 foot between two of the big beach.
Right.
So we have access. We get there, beach is not open. It's occupied with chairs and umbrellas, and they put that stuff out there. Whether there are people, I'm not aware. They have their equipment out there just about every day, occupied. That's fine. I have no problem. I simply don't believe that that beach is really quite that open. Now, by contrast, anyone with a boat can come along and cruise up and down our canals. Now, ordinarily, a boat off our canal a few times a week, look around, we often will wave at it as it goes. I don't care. And then they go away. There are large canals all along the foreshore that are public public access. The boaters are egalitarian activity and beachgoers. Whether that justifies 80% to the canal fee is an open question. I'm not sure, but I don't want to about that particular detail. Let me ask you this, Justin. On the mechanics of this thing,
Mhm.
I have a boat that sits on a
How's that?
at the end of on my dock, and I'm on one of those little canals, country club. I have two problems. One of them is getting out my canal, right at the mouth of the canal. I went out the other day. I was touching the bottom, and I'm 32 inches. So the water was that low at the mouth of the canal. I had to drag my boat over just to get out into the bay. I assume our canal is deeper than that, but the mouth is built up. I assume the dredging will adjust that.
That's
There's
correct.
a second problem. Lower my boat from my at anything like low tide. I can't get it all.
Right.
That's because over the years, that dirt has built up under the dock and blocks the ability of the lift to go down. Will they be doing anything about any of that? I didn't quite.
Yeah, I did brief on that earlier. That's when we would have the contractor talk to you directly and come under a separate contract. So while he's there, he'll do some scoops, charge you under a separate contract, because the town would not want to have the liability of a pile supported structure or a seawall because we don't know the condition. But if you came under a separate, Mhm. Yeah, because we'll provide the contractor, we'll provide where that sediment goes. You don't even have to pay for the disposal of it. And so what you typically get is dimes on the dollar dredging in and around your dock. Where we had this one gentleman say just recently it was going to cost him $4,500 to have a local marine contractor come out and do under dock dredging. These contractors that I'm used to dealing with will do that for a lot less. Usually it's a couple $100, and it's like because all they do is charge by the bin load, and it just depends on the contractor. But we will definitely align you with whatever contractor might be in your neighborhood. Just for that, yes, that is correct. You're welcome. Back there, sir. Then I'll come to you. But there's nationwide exemptions, and there's Florida Department of Environmental Protection exemptions for dockside dredging, as long as you meet those requirements. And again, one of those things that I used to do is well in advance of you getting there, I would get you and I would put out your information to all the citizens in the area by what you're going to be, they would call you in hopefully in enough time to come back and do their dock. But a lot of times what you would see if they had to pull like a small permit, like the dredging firm had to do that, they would go and do this and then they would, hit the canal right next to it. Once they get the permit, they come back to them and do that service. Yeah, you're going to be privy to our spoil sites, or either our spoil sites, or if the material is good enough, we can take it right to that mitigation site that we talked about. Yes, ma'am. And then I'll come back to you, sir. Sorry.
And go north.
No, it's based on need.
Oh, I think my voice carries, but anyway, so have you have an idea of the logistics, where, how, and how long once you start?
Again, it just depends. Like we're going to do it based on need. Flat out, you do it based on need. Right now, we need a lot of material to fill our spoil site, and if the more material that's usable material that I can go and put into that mitigation area, I'm going to grab. And so even though the initial 15 canals won't provide that, we're going to be looking down these canals in order to get even, more material. So we might be there sooner than later.
Okay, but that means you might be dredging here today, 6 miles south tomorrow, back up 3 miles north, which
we'll try
is
to
a lot of
what we'll
lost
try to
time
do.
utilization.
We'll try to group them in a geographic
Okay.
zone. So we'll identify those before the contractor gets there, have them work at the most needed areas, and then work out or work south, then
Okay.
go north. We're going to do it in a strategic manner. We're not going to willy-nilly pop
Okay.
here and pop there because that costs more money.
That's why I'm asking.
Yes.
Right, and time is money, so.
Yeah.
And
Ask
I'd
him. He
like
knows.
a comment also, the gentleman in the blue shirt. So we are on Sarasota Bay, and I'd like to share with the folks on the Gulf of Mexico side that many of us don't even have boats. So when you say we all can use the beach, but you all cannot use Sarasota Bay and canals, that's not quite accurate. So there are only a couple public access areas to our beaches. And as gentleman mentioned, you really have to know where they are. There are only about 20 spots in each. So our association is fortunate that we do have access to the Gulf, but most of the associations on the Sarasota Bay side do not have that access. I'd like you to know that. So people have to drive. It's not a 4-block. Let's not oversimplify it. People sometimes have to drive 10, 20 minutes to get to, yes, ma'am, because there are only couple access. I've been on Longboat Key since 1991. I'm only aware of 2, okay, 2 access points. Maybe there is 3. I don't know by now. But anyway, right. I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying to give you some educational information. And people that are on Sarasota Bay side, many of us don't have the boats. We don't have access to take the boats out. So it is a lot for people who come from outside. And yes, there are some residents who have the boats, but most of us don't. And yet we're willing to pay and contribute 20% to the beach. And as good neighbors who live under the same umbrella of the beautiful Longboat Key, we would expect you to contribute 20% to our side when there is a public need for it. It's not my need. I don't have a canal. I don't have a private boat. And neither are 225 residents in my association, but yet we will be paying for it. So look at it that way, please.
Thanks. Sir, I'm going to get to you right now. I promise. Thank you.
So my question is the application. So for the restaurants and given that traffic is created, or at least boating traffic is created as a result of their businesses. So I kind of think there needs to be Well, you tell me.
Yeah,
How
and
would that be
and
applied?
you're bringing up a good point. And again, through transparency, anybody can go on this website and anybody can click on any of the commercial websites or any of the commercial properties and see what they're going to be charged. So if you look at this one for the, this is the boathouse. You guys know, it's a condominium. It has a bunch of units inside of it. As a matter of fact, if you look at the bottom of the screen, it has 199 units. So every one of those units is being charged one. So if you think about that, take the $620 and you times it by 199. Now you understand that's what they're being charged.
And so something like a restaurant.
Let's go up to let's do it together. No, that's why we have this, and that's why it's so good to be as transparent as the town is. We're throwing it out, and that way anybody can go in here and look at this information all at the same time. So we have Mar Vista and the Shore. Let's click on the Shore. All right, so they have a pretty hefty taxable value. They have the EBU rate of this.
For the dock, is that for docking position? Is that the way?
No, I clicked on this, but there's actually a separate one just for the dock. So not only will the dock pay, but the unit will pay as well. And then so it will have I think this might need to be updated.
Yeah, as the question was being asked, Tara and I started to look at this because we heard the comment on the restaurant. I'm going to look into this specifically and get back to you on it, Charlie. I'm not sure that this is accurate here as far as this particular property.
Hey, look. We've been updating these until as recently as this morning. So we're doing our best as things change and we're trying to get through it, but we're trying to give you at least a generalization as to what it is. We can go down to another one like we can go down to Cannons if everybody wants to travel down to Cannons.
To answer the question very directly though, the intent is for commercial properties that have more than a single boating access unit for that to basically be a multiplier on that 620. That's the intent.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
You can see it in what he's showing on the screen.
On the dredging is to go down a center line and then approximately 20 feet either side of the center line to a depth of about 5 feet at mean low.
That's a general, it's a very generalization, but know this, there are certain canals, especially on the north end. And if you're in the Sleepy Lagoon area, there are some extremely narrow canals where you can only do a V cut. There's others that are like the one leading into Cannons that you could probably go 40 feet on either side of the center line. We're going to try to max out what we can, but we still want to stay away from, as much as we humanly possible, stay away from those pile supported structures or those seawalls. Typically it's 5 feet. That's what the permits allow, and that's what they consider under maintenance dredging. So that's why we're gonna, we would target that as the max.
And if you have a question about a specific waterway, the canal sheets that Charlie presented there have a specific assignment for each waterway. So you will notice they're generally grouped. You'll notice it's pretty common among country club shores, for example, and you get into a different region, it's pretty common as well. But you can actually go in there and you can look at how your canal, what the specific maintenance plan is for each waterway. And that was selected based on a variety of factors, some of which were, the type of utilization that's in the existing canal, the type of utilization that's appropriate for the canal, the exposure to different elements that would affect utilization, navigation, et cetera. But there's a prescription for each waterway, so you can check into it.
What's a little interesting too on here too is if you are having a hard time locating where's my property, right? Well, you can actually just go click on this where it says find my address or parcel. I'll just put in, and you can just start typing. Hold on, my fat fingers. See, then it'll come up with General Harris. This is Public Works, so it'll actually bring you right to that property. So if you guys are struggling trying to find on the map and scrolling around, you can actually do it that way as well. Sir, you had the question back there. Mm-hmm.
That after 10 years, mangroves and stone grows that canal. This may be also taken into account.
We would only trim mangroves for navigation. So for central, for like, again, mangrove trimming requires separate complete permitting, and it requires specialty people to do it. And like with red mangroves, you can only trim in a vertical line what is the waterward most prop root of a red mangrove. So we would have to look at like, is it causing a visibility issue for boaters trying to travel or traverse in that location? And if that's the case, then of course, then we would actually, that would be included. And there's a lot of very skinny canals on the north end where you'll probably have to do trimming prior to even the contractor getting there. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to work. So yes, I'm going to go over here.
Two quickies.
Then I got you.
What will happen with the material that you can't reuse? Where will that go?
We would set up what's called a DMMA, like a dredge material management site. And that's like usually a holding bin. Typically, you take that material and truck it over to the landfill, and the landfills like to use that as top cover.
Okay, so it's all going to be reusable and saleable and.
Well, it won't be saleable because you can't really sell the material because the material belongs to the town or the state. If we're dredging those access channels, there's a thing called a severance fee. If you're using that material for anything other than the common good, you have to pay, it used to be $2.60 per cubic yard. I think that's gone up a lot more than that. But then you would have to pay that if you're using it for something other than for the common good because it's state lands.
Okay.
The real value in that is in reusing the material is the reduced cost to dispose of it. That's the real value. In situations where we have to treat the material, we have to treat it in some way either to stabilize it. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The point I was making is the real economic value in what Charlie's describing is that there's a significantly reduced cost to dispose of the material.
Okay.
In reuse.
And it won't be left in the water somewhere else.
Mm-mm.
No. If it's placed in the water,
that was the reason for the question.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure you're making some other pile somewhere else.
Again, the mitigation area is a little bit different. What we're trying to do is fill a hole, make it better, so that way the seagrasses can grow. But you just can't side cast. You can't do those.
Okay, and then last question: at the will there be preemptive dredging? So at the ends of the canals in Country Club Shores. Most of the canals, to my knowledge, you can get out most of the time, or almost all the time, but maybe not all the time for all boats. But at the ends of the canals on the sides, it looks like there's dredged material from a prior dredge. Will that be swept away so it doesn't come back in?
No, I mean, that's the sandbars that I was referring to. As a matter of fact, I mean, the boat view thing would have been really good to show right now because you can actually see that as you're driving by where the shoals are coming in and actually escalating and whatnot. But that's just from sand moving from one part of the bar to another part of the bar and whatnot. Can you dredge off to those sides a little bit? No, as you're digging, that barge, you got to think about a barge that's going to be displacing a couple of 100 tons. Not like a normal boat because these things are pretty big and they're pretty sturdy. And as that thing's moving, it's pulling that material off there anyway, because as you're digging, it's pulling the sides in. So when you design a canal, you don't do a box cut, you do a V cut. So you have a 4-to-1 ratio on the sides for the sloughing effect to happen. And you always include that. I always do, at least I always did in the 15 years I was working for Charlotte County. Because I wanted to increase the amount of material available for the dredger to get.
Can you show Country Club Shores? I think I'm trying to describe something that's different than what you're describing a little further south there. So you see the boxes at the end. It's at the ends of the canals. So there's a channel that goes out, but all that material at the end, that is shallow, close to those seawalls.
Yeah, right in here.
Yeah, but that's going to end up there, but then, go a little further down with your arrow there, like all that material, is that going to be preemptively dredged?
Mm-mm.
No,
we can't because it was never permitted to dredge that. You know what I mean? So what we're trying to do is utilize the permits that have been pulled. It's not to say we couldn't try in the program in the future, couldn't try to get some more, width of, because really we'd want to just get the edges, a little, like you're saying, preemptive dredging. But at the same time, you could do, instead of going, say, a box cut of 40 feet at that location, try to up the permit to 50 feet. You know what I mean? Make it a little bit wider. Try to permit it, ask for an exemption to go down to 6 feet. Make it a little bit deeper. So that way you're buying time that way. It's almost like the way we build our beaches. We overfill them and allow them to equilibrate. Yeah.
This reminds me of, I used to live in Chicago. You dig out your driveway, and then the guy comes by with,
with the
plow,
plow.
blocks the end of your driveway, and I don't still want that to happen again.
I get
The industry term for what you're describing is called advanced maintenance. That's where essentially you dig the hole larger to allow for shoaling to come in the future. In certain areas, and I just pulled up a canal in very close to the image on the screen. For example, the average vessel draft in that particular canal is 2 to 4 feet. So we actually need 4 feet, but we actually have this designed to a max depth of 5 feet. And so there is a little bit of advanced maintenance. And just as a general rule in pretty much all the dredge work we do, we always add a little bit of, we call it over depth or advanced maintenance, specifically for that. So that as soon as you, in your example, you shovel the driveway and the snow keeps falling, the shoaling keeps occurring, that you're not in a matter of weeks, shallower than your target draft. So when we design these, we do design these with some thought process in terms of this needs to stand the test of at least a little bit of time. Now, shoaling rates are different everywhere you go. So, but to Charlie's point, if we were to investigate trying to do some type of expanded sediment basin or sediment trap, if you will, which is occasionally a strategy for a very aggressive area, that would require, a very specific permit process and new work dredging. It opens up a bit of a can of worms. Not to say that it can't be looked at in the past, and certainly a program like this opens the door to evaluate these types of things and identify discrete problems like you're alluding to, but it's not set up yet.
Sir, back to you. Why is this bouncing around? Somebody took control of my computer, so sorry about this.
I ate away this town about 2 months ago to trim the mangroves at the entrance of our canal. The mangroves are all out of the middle of the canal. We were told that there was no funds available, but now with this program, it would come under a different funding, and we should be able.
No. Again, if it's in the canal, like basically it's blocking navigation, it's blocking line of sight, it would be this program. That's part of it. Back to you, sir. Not all, but
the canal. And I think the gentleman following up on Royal Road mentioned that those couple of canals are really getting silted up. So is the, going back to basics, is a fundamental problem of the silting of the canals mostly due to taking,
stormwater
stormwater off?
No, stormwater is a contributor, but it isn't the primary factor. Sand's going to move because we're in a dynamic environment. These canals, and the best thing that you can ever have is after you dredge a canal, go use your boat all the time, because the more you use your boat, the more it stays open. But when you have this seasonal residents that we have, and we do, you don't get that type of boat traffic as much as you would want. It's a contributing factor. It's not the driving force.
So I can understand that the bay end of the canals, the driving force is probably wave action.
It is. I mean, because again, if you look at just this as an example, is this better? We got rid of the reverb. Yay, But like in this case, you have sandbars, and the sandbars, sand doesn't move in this direction, usually moves in a north or south direction, just like on our beaches, because the currents come in, every day, and they go out every day. Because they come in, they're pushing sand to the north. Because in this location, the closest inlet is New Pass. And then when it wants to exit, it goes the other way. So it stacks up into the bay, and then it wants to exit on both sides. But at the ends of the canals, like you're saying, with the siltation, you're going to get contributing effects by those culvert pipes. However, every time somebody mows their lawn, every time somebody like blows those clippings out into I've seen it, it gets down to the bottom of the canal and then helps contribute to the siltation of that canal. So, I mean, there are a number of factors that contribute to siltation. And Mark, am I missing any?
No, that's a really good summary. It's a variety of factors. It's going to be different for every canal and for every location on the canal. The picture he has on the screen, there's one end of the canal is probably more dominated by the stormwater inputs, the runoff. The other end of the canal is certainly much more influenced by wave action and littoral transport process, the transport of the sand along the seawalls. There's also one of the other factors is as we know during the rainy season, right now I drove over the bridge getting on the island. The water was gorgeous. I could see straight down to the bottom. It's super clear visibility. In the summertime, when that visibility goes to very low, the reason it gets low is because there's sediment suspended in the water column. And in low energy environments, that sediment can fall out in low energy environments. So again, it's the stormwater thing. It is a very localized issue to stormwater pipes where they exit, but it's also just regional as well.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point, because I literally had a call from a gentleman who was like, "Oh, I hope you're going to be dredging the end of Canal 49." But I will just show you. Like, look, there's a GMD culvert. That culvert dumps right into here. Mm-hmm. All right. Canal 49. The gentleman called me. We respond to his email earlier today. Same case scenario where he has, I think it's this boat, but you have a canal, you have a culvert coming right off of GMD, and there's like more siltation in this location than there is towards the end. But the permits that we just pulled actually include these areas. So we're going to try to help and affect change.
Last comment, though, I mentioned it for a couple of reasons. One is, for the future, we should try to mitigate all the sources that are silting the canal, whether it's special things we do at the inlets or controlling the silting through the culverts.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because one of the things I used to do, especially like some of these big ones, right? We used to do splash pads in Charlotte County where we were having historic continuous problems, and what you would normally see is a horseshoe growing around where the culvert pipe, and the velocity of that pipe would just exit into the canal. So we would actually put in a concrete pad at the 5 foot, at the depth that would actually disperse that energy, so it wouldn't create this issue as much.
But it also goes to some extent to, who pays for what. Because, stormwater disposal, if it, every road in Longboat Key that has a culvert and a curb basically ends up in the canal. I don't think there's any drainage pipe that goes out in the Gulf of
No,
Mexico.
we have no. Yeah.
And so that's a community service.
But that's that 20%. The holistic 20% that everybody pays for. There is one of the justifications. That's one of the justifications for that. And like, just this as an interesting sidebar, you see all these. These are all the ponds for our lovely golf course on the west side. If you really scroll in on this pond, because they're all in, every one of these interconnect. This is a weir structure right here. See this weir?
Yeah.
That separates salt from. And the reason why you have to separate salt with a weir there is because there's 3 pipes that come out right here, and so those all of that golf course runoff is potentially affecting this. So again, that's that 20%. That's why it makes sense that, again, I'm not going to like try to sway anybody. It's not my job. My job is just to give you the facts. But I could tell you there's a fact that there's a weir there, and there's a fact that there's a pipe that goes out into a canal that happens to potentially affect that canal. So again, that's that 20%. Sir.
From a different perspective, how will the marine life be impacted by the dredging?
That's Good question. Great question. Because there's a lot in your permits. There are a lot of checks and balances that you have to have. You have to put out turbidity screens. They can't impact the manatees. And you know, we have manatees in our canals, especially like this time of year, right? So you can impact them. There has to be an observer on the dredge. If the observer sees a manatee, they have to shut down operations. Same thing with turbidity. They're, inside the canals, you're usually allowed about 29 what they call NTUs. That's something that looks a little bit more like coffee. Okay, so you're allowed to have that much siltation inside the curtains. Outside in Sarasota Bay, that's an OFW, which is an outstanding Florida water. Again, I already said it's a national estuary. So guess what the NTUs are allowed out there? Almost nothing. So you have to, even when you're building that mitigation site in the middle of you have to control, everything that you're doing in order not to impact the marine life that share and that we want to protect.
Will there be a performance metric before and after?
Well, that's the performance metric for that is more in, one, we have to monitor the turbidity throughout the entire process of the project. But the metric really is how well is it doing? That's where that year 6 comes in. And so we're monitoring, we're going out there and taking a look and making sure that, one, we didn't have a negative impact. 2, our seagrasses are growing in that nice mitigation area, because there's always monitoring that's required as part of a permit. And then finding out in the future where our shoaling rates are so we can really, direct the program where it needs to go.
And just to follow up, performance metric wise for environmental protection on dredging projects, we look at 2 primary things. One is what we call primary impacts. These are things that are a direct result to construction, usually during construction. For example, we tore up a seagrass bed in the process of dredging. We went right through a seagrass bed. The other one we look at is secondary impacts. These are long-term impacts, which you're referring to as performance metrics. In this type of work, endangered species, direct impacts on endangered species are probably the largest concern during construction. Manatees is a terrific example. The other direct impacts are with regards to sedimentation or siltation from turbidity, as Charlie mentioned, dirty water essentially escaping the primary work zone and shoaling in areas outside of the work zone. The secondary impacts for most of these projects is very, 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 very negligible, except to say one caveat is the seagrass mitigation component that is associated with some of the work that needs to be done. There are performance metrics associated with that. So
yeah, we have to monitor that site after establishment for 5 years.
We're actually really excited to promote the idea that by the time this project is done, there's going to be more seagrass in Sarasota Bay, and the bay will be healthier as a result, because we're going to be removing a lot of the nutrients that are contained in the system. There are some areas right now where we have a few canals that go through seagrass beds. As a matter of fact, it's a bit of a catch-22. One of the problems with not maintaining a canal is you tend to invite shoaling, and as the shoals develop in your canal, the seagrass comes behind it, and then it gets very difficult, very expensive to dredge that canal. The seagrass can become protected, etc. So a really good strategy is to maintain the canal so that you don't invite that resource into your system. But for the areas where seagrass is impacted, Charlie mentioned that there is a seagrass mitigation site in the bay, the old federal channel that's across the bay. That's been selected as a seagrass mitigation site. And so I don't recall the exact ratio, but it's greater than 1 for every unit of seagrass that we pull out. Greater than 1 gets replanted somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so it's a net benefit. Yeah. It is. It is. Yeah.
It's the means and methods by which the permits are requiring us to build it. It's not simple. It's not easy. Back in 2003, there was 3 or 4 seagrass mitigation areas that they had to create. Hence, that was a reason. That was a driving cost behind the higher cost of that project. But again, one of the things we have to do is we have to transplant as many of the seagrasses that we're impacting to that mitigation area. So we're going to try to save as many as we can through our impacts. And so the simple fact is we actually permitted much more than what we need. So in the future, if we need to do more, we'll already have the right conditions in place to go affect that change. Sir, you at the end?
Just a quick thought, looking at the way projects go and the fact that we're looking at multiple years for this, what is the confidence level that the budgeting that's being done financially is really going to be sufficient to get this thing taken care of? And what are the ramifications if it's not?
And that's a great question. That's why we hired Mark. Mark's been like literally doing this his entire life. I mean, he used to be a dredging engineer for Manson, one of the biggest dredging companies in the world. He used to have to do the cost analysis, and he uses a different type of cost analysis. He actually uses production-based cost analysis. And in that, he's actually putting in an inflationary, every year he's putting in an inflationary amount, a percent, to cover for the what ifs that might come down the road. But you're right, you never know. Another COVID could happen, and the cost of steel and the cost of fuel could drive through the roof again. We're planning for it with what information and knowledge that we have today and force projecting for the next 5 years, at least through those inflationary processes in order to come up with the best guesstimate that we have. Great question, though, sir. Yes, ma'am. It depends on how much we have to pull out from that canal. It could be a couple of weeks. It could be a month. It just depends on the length of the dredge and how much material needs to be removed.
Somebody giving the manatees advance notice, or are you evicting them?
No, again, like I said, we put up screening devices in order to make sure that they're not impacting the zone. The screening devices that they use cannot entangle a manatee, and there's actually spotters on the dredge. I've been out there when manatees actually came right into my box cut, and we're like, everybody shut down. We're all like, hey guys, and then you wait until they go, and then you confirm that they're gone, and then you go out there and do your work. So
It sounds funny, but there are.
it is. Paths get super curious, like, oh man, that's cool. You know, mom's like, no, get away from the big machine.
We have a full-on specification for not allowing our contractors to, the term is harass manatees.
Yeah.
You have to let them leave on their own accord.
Hold on, let me get that, then I'll come back. Correct. It would. The formula is going to stay in place and throughout the program. That's the way it's designed currently. And so again, those assessments will be dropped in the millages. The millage rate tax will drop hopefully in half. Right. Yes, sir.
Colors on this map over here. Is that
They don't mean anything. They're just colors. But great question, sir. No, it's just we're just trying to make it so it pops and you can determine or distinguish between Canal 1 and Canal 7. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard. You just have to do what you can. Any other questions? Yes, sir. No, sir, it will not. Yes, sir.
Do we know what percentage siltation, and is anyone talking about prohibiting this from being?
I want to say it's already in our code of ordinance, but it's probably something that's not being, you know what I mean? We can't. Yeah, no, me too. Yeah, no, if you're on the north end and you have like a lot of those canals that have like that are lined with the mangroves that we have been talking about, anytime they drop a leaf, you know, it becomes detritus on the bottom of the thing. So it is, you know, nature's doing its work, and you know, us as nature, the evil nature is doing our work too. Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. No. Sure. Yeah, and that's why we went for it. I can. I appreciate the opportunity. We are lucky. Our commission, they basically say try to find as much money as you humanly possibly can on the behalf of this town. And we have really great lobbyists that we actually employ. And one of our lobbyists happened to, like a couple of weeks back, just kind of reach out to us and say, hey, the Water Resource Development Act, the new one, the 2026 Act, has um, caveats in there for dredging and not maintenance dredging, but dredging and mitigation creation. Well, I was like, woo. I started getting all excited because, like, hey, Army Corps, because water is what funds Army Corps to do any of their like coastal projects. And so I'm like, Army Corps created this dang channel over here in the 1880s, and then they decided to move it over here. And we can just blow up the map, and I can actually show you the thing. So here's Sister Keys. Here's our pipeline. See this channel right here? That was called the Long Bar Channel. It was created back in the 1800s by the Army Corps. Okay, they dredged that thing. And then in the 1916s, they created this one, and they abandoned this one. So I'm saying, hey, give me $3 million. I want to do this mitigation site using our material and our seedlings and everything else to go out there and fix a problem that you created. So we're kind of like, we're asking in the best way we can in order to try to affect change for you all. So the appropriations request went out. We're waiting to hear back from either, either if Commissioner Buchanan or no, I keep saying that, Congressman Buchanan or Congressman Stubbe want to take the reins behind it and move that forward through the House and Senate. So we're lucky because Congressman Buchanan lives on Longboat Key. Both Congressman Stubbe and Congressman Buchanan have been very generous. They've earmarked $3 million for the purchase of the pipe for the Sabacrius project, and that was an appropriations. They're right now they're still sticking to the wall as some additional funds to help us with our mitigation projects. So again, we push, we try to do anything we can to try to get these funds, and when these opportunities come up, we jump all over them. Correct. No, it would reduce. If we're looking to collect 9 million and we get, say, 3 million, and a lot of times you ask for 3 million, you get 1 million. You know what I mean? It is what it is. But if that was to move forward and we're able to get those kinds of funds, instead of 9 million that we have to collect, over 9 million in the first 5 years, now we only have to collect, 7, 8, It depends on what we can get from that. And then say we still needed a little bit more in order to like jumpstart that program and get these canals dredged and move forward with the creation of the seagrass mitigation area. That's when we can go back to you all and say, hey, do you guys mind funding the remainder that we need through this short-term loan? And that reduces our interest, it reduces everything. So we're going to take any avenue or approach we can in order to try to, get those funds for you. All right, I've been speaking for quite a while now. If I have any, thank you so much. I appreciate it.